No, it's not pre-recorded. I'm just taking a few minutes to get ready. Irish Dreadtide called me out. 100%. This is pre-recorded. He knew you were going to ask. That's 100%. Dreadtide. We posted that at 7:02 p.m. on February 24th, 2025. All right, give me more seconds, y'all. Just like I called Castro. Yes, exactly. That's what I do. I pre-record and know things. All right. Almost ready, you chat. All right. My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. Wow, I am very big. That I have scale this improperly. Yeah. This is a channel dedicated to the lore and of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Welcome to the live stream. We don't do these too often. I'm trying to do them more often, but these are live streams where I break down various aspects. I'll either do Star Citizen in the future. We'll look at we'll go through Sarna and look at some of the factions from Mech Warrior and BattleTech in the future. But yeah. What is my favorite Star Citizen lore term? That's a hard one. There's actually a couple that are lingering in the back of my head. I'm trying to remember them. I think my new favorite is the name that the verse is supposed to have. I never really realized it, but if you read the original timeline from CIG, the original timeline, the original time capsule that they released. They have a term that comes up a lot, which is called the systems. So it was clear that CIG initially, the developers initially wanted the verse to be called the systems rather than the verse. Paul's not special. I could break down on a live stream too. Yes, but that works too. Is this live? Is it Monday? What multiverse are you currently? Champ, I've been trying to stream more on Mondays. I'm no longer streaming on Wednesdays. For those of you who don't know who are with this, welcome. I don't stream. I haven't been streaming a lot recently to TheAstroHistorian, but I do stream regularly on a separate channel, the AstroPub Live on YouTube and the AstroPub on Twitch. So if you've seen me before, and you're like, I've seen this person before, it's because you've seen me at the AstroPub. I've had multiple people say, wait, are you the AstroHistorian when I stream on the AstroPub? And it's like, yes, I am. It's really weird. When I went to CitizenCon 2 years ago, people would recognize me from my voice. It's like, that is creepy. And I know why, because y'all like listen to me sleep while you sleep. So this is the voice that talks to you when you're asleep. Which, I don't know how I feel about that. I know it's a compliment for sure that, you know, y'all feel safe enough for me to sleep to you, but you know. Yeah, that's true. And and while driving and while working. Another question, what's your least favorite term? Ghosting. Ghosting is the worst term in Star Citizen for hilarious reasons. Since the term ghosting was first came up in the Star Citizen universe, was invented in the Star Citizen universe in 2012. For those of you who don't know, ghosting means murdering, but it's like in the Star Citizen universe, it's like murdering someone for real. Because of regeneration, it's become known as like giving someone the final death when the one they can't come back from regeneration. History of Star Citizen number 5. It is currently with my audio editor. So it's taken a lot longer. There was some family stuff with the editor, and there were some other issues that popped up with the editor. So it's just taken longer than it should have. But it should be out soon-ish. I couldn't tell you right now, but I'm hoping it's out before March. We'll see. And if you really want to know about that, you become a member or a member on YouTube or Patreon. Patreons get like 2 weeks access to it. So, will 4.1 have any new features? So, Adamolia, you're in the. I'm not going to be able to answer a lot of those questions with this stream because this one's a little bit more lore focused. So, but I wouldn't be able to tell you, and I wouldn't tell you. I don't know when 4.1 is. You finally managed to successfully traverse Stanton Pyro jump point last night. Huzzah! Huzzah! I'm sorry I'm late. What's happening? I'm doing a lore stream. The true PvP goal, the ghost kill. Yeah. No regen, no pass and go, dead. Yeah. I'm gonna yap about landing zone lore. That's fine. So are all the Frontier fighters getting exterminated? Currently, yes. That's at least the lore narrative, if not the actual thing that's happening. So for those of you who don't know, I just released a video on what I'm calling this Pyro Stanton War, what CIG calls Stave Stanton and Fight for Pyro. And it's effectively the first major story arc of Star Citizen. It is there's been some lead up, including Xenothreat and other actions, but I will say that it's a divisive thing. I don't think anyone has ever said that it's good. I don't think I've ever seen anyone claim that the current narrative arc is amazing. I think most people say it's fine to like they enjoyed it, or that they saw the twist coming, for instance. But I don't think anyone is satisfied with where CIG is. And I said it in the video, but for a first attempt, it's not good. But I understand that it's their first attempt. That they're still learning how to tell stories in the game, and that's sort of where they're going with it. I appreciate the attempt, because for the longest time, most people don't even know that there is lore in the game. They just sort of assume it's a space game. And there is extensive world building that CIG has done in the past that's just not been brought in the game. So the fact that they're bringing it in through things like the voiced over NPCs, the events, and stories continuing forward is appreciative. I just want them to be a little bit more concise with what they're doing. It sure is a narrative arc, yes. To make the other guy back in the character gen screen for their next of kin, basically. Ghosting. It's just unfortunate that is the term, is ghosting. As far as our narrative arcs go, it sure is one of them. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Is there any other system like Pyro in the Star Citizen lore? I mean, filled with pirates, etc. Yes, actually 2. One of them is called Cathcart, and the other one is its neighbor, which is called Nexus. Nexus is actually pretty close. Nexus is connected to, I want to say Magnus, but it could be connected to, I'm not looking at a name. I have to look it up. It's where the Murray Cup is. Ellis System. Ellis System. Is the Nexus the tar pit UEE stuck in? Yes. So the UEE tried to pacify the... They tried to pacify the Nexus system through invasion, and yeah, that didn't work. Who founded ArcCorp? A small group of friends. The company or the landing zone, because the company itself was actually founded by a small group of friends who founded the company specifically to be a exploration company with a Zeus Mark I. So first generation Zeus. Well, maybe not first generation, but the original Zeus model. Yeah, Axel, I can't believe he's ghosting me. Yeah, that's the unfortunate, correlation these days. Are they linked in any way, factions or else? Yeah, sort of. Nexus and Croshaw are both, not Croshaw, Nexus and Ellis. No, Ellis is, what did I just say earlier? Cathcart. Nexus and Cathcart are literally next to each other. They're linked. So the new lore, which has come up because there's been a hint that there is some sort of loose association of outlaws that work together, which I've called in the past the Outlaw Confederacy, which CIG has decided to call the Council. Which is sort of we don't know about a lot of it yet, but it's definitely some sort of loose alliance or loose conjoining of various criminal organizations and syndicates that work together when they need to. Because like pretty much every time in lore, when the UEE shows up to like a gang infested system, all the gangs put away their differences and turn towards the UEE and attack the UEE, like regardless of their animosity towards one another. I love your lore videos about Star Citizen. I really hope you enjoy doing them as much as people watching them. I like doing them. Yeah, thank you, Max. It takes me a lot of time and effort to do them, and it's always nice to see them succeed, but I would have done them anyways, just because I like them. I like doing lore stuff. For those of you who don't know, I actually watch lore channels for other games and other series frequently. It's one of the reasons why I got into Star Citizen lore as it was, because I saw this interesting universe that the more I looked into it, the more interesting it became, and I saw that nobody was doing anything about it, so I said, why not? So how did Pyro Corp go from Explorer Corpo to UEE East Stand-in Company? It's complicated because they went from an exploration company to being a mineral rights company. and from a mineral, no, it was an exploration company to a terraformation company, and from a terraformation company to just a mineral rights company. And it's a long string of events that eventually led them to becoming this sort of gigantic super megacorp. So who are the real good guys in Pyro? The fire rats. I'll explain in a moment. What's the best game in Pyro lore-wise, and what gang, and what's your favorite? It's the fire rats. I'll go over them in a moment. I remember hearing lore-wise, the UEE has a strike force on the Pyro side of the jump point. I can't remember if I actually read that or if it came into the game. There's nothing overtly that I found that's mentioned that. There have been incursions from the UEE into Pyro, but the only thing I can think of is there's an Invictus ad which shows, I want to say, a Polaris or a Perseus in Pyro attacking a group. It might be retaliators. I don't know. What's the Terra University? There's a couple of them. The Overlords are fun. The Overlords are fun. For those who don't know, the Overlords are the Power Rangers. They're the Power Rangers if they were rated R. They're the Quentin Tarantino version of the Power Rangers. The event factions felt so shallow. The Twist Frontier Fighters, actually bad guys, felt really stupid to me. Yeah, I mean, the twist wasn't a bad twist. Like, it's a classic sort of misdirection. The twist that they were actually the Slicers it could work. The problem was with any mystery, you need to have some indication that there is some sort of, like, there's like a reason why you should suspect them as being not legitimate. And the problem is that there's a lot of things that are going against Star Citizen and CIG's development like this at this time, because one, there has been no story. So the factions that have been established haven't actually been established. So the idea that CIG added a new faction randomly isn't necessarily off the beaten path. It's not necessarily weird to hear that, like, there's a new faction in the game, because there are a ton of new factions in the game. The Headhunters, for instance, are a new faction in the game, in the sense that CIG didn't have the Headhunters written down until like 2 or 3 years ago. And if you're just playing the game, most of the factions are new. You probably didn't even know who the CFP was until Save Stanton. So the idea that the CFP existed and the Headhunters the Frontier Fighters existed didn't bat an eye. You didn't bat an eye because you're just like, I'm playing the game. These are factions. So having a twist that this brand new faction that everyone's mentioning is a brand new faction was actually the bad guys isn't bad, but they were already starting off on the wrong foot because nobody knew that was to be suspect. Nobody knows the background. Effectively, the reason why I think this twist and a lot of the narrative fell flat was because, A, you're telling it through mission dialogue that no one listens and no one reads. And B, they didn't do the work. CIG needs to put in the legwork. They need to put in the work beyond atmospheric storytelling to establish the characters, or in this case, the factions and what they do. They are at a disadvantage compared to other games like, say, Elite Dangerous, which has literal decades of information about the Alliance, the Federation, and the Empire. There is a lot of information throughout most of those about each of those factions, and even individuals inside those factions. And they have Galnet, which is in game and teaches people about the different factions and the different individuals who are in charge of those factions and the sub factions inside those factions and so on and so forth. CIG doesn't have that yet, but they're acting like they do. They don't. So. Is there a middle-class district in Terra Prime? Possibly. I don't know off the top of my head, though. And that's my argument. Yeah, Nolan. Nolan says, I'd argue most people didn't know that CFP or frontier fighters existed until after they already completed Save Standard, even though the last phase was supposed to be all about those factions. That's what I mean. Like, that's the problem, is that everything is new. So when the twist is built on the idea that this is a new faction that no one's ever heard of, like the Slicers or the Frontier Fighters, that doesn't mean anything to your average person playing the game because all of the factions are new. There's no establishment of history for the factions. Mighty Morphin power addicts. Yeah. Overlords are the Power Rangers hopped up on drugs. Yes. Did pirates have any interactions with alien species? Traded the Banu and fight against other bad guys? The Vandul? Yeah. Famously, there is the warlord of the Null system. Let me look up his name real quick. Shauna. This. I forgot his name, and I can't see if I can find it. But the warlord, the Tavaran warlord of the Olympus, for those of you who don't know, the Tavaran, they're a species no one has seen yet because we have some basic concept images, but nothing fully fleshed out. The Tavaran are the old enemy of humanity. They were the first alien species we fought and beat, and we beat them twice. And they've become sort of a client species to humanity. Half of them, or like a large population of them, live inside UEE and a large live outside the UEE. But they're mostly criminals these days because their society is very martial. So you can think the Krogan. They're the Tavaran are the Star Citizen versions of the Krogan, only if the Krogan were birds. Not like big buff, but like super nimble and like that sort of thing. They're sort of the stand-ins for the Kilrathi. But the leader of the Null, this warlord, actually unified the pirate gangs of Null to fight back a Vandul incursion. But yeah, it's even mentioned in one of the vertical slices for Squadron 42 that one of the side missions is to go rescue people who are being enslaved and being sold to Banu traders. So yeah, the pirates and outlaws work with the Banu all the time because the Banu are very fluid when it comes to the law. If they can get away with it, they will. Sulis aren't necessarily... They do risk some issues, so like they do risk getting kicked out of the protectorate if they don't abide by the protectorate, and so if they break the laws and hurt humans. But they'll buy like human slaves all the time, and because they value humans as sort of a novelty, but also for their expertise and their comparatively longer lives. So. Don't disrespect the Krogan like that. Tavaran couldn't survive nuking themselves. That's what I'm saying. They're like the Krogan narratively, but in like physicality, they're not nearly as strong. So they have a martial hierarchy? Yes. Is there a moderate party in the UEE? Yes, it's called the Universalists. In fact, the only Tavaran member of the Senate is a Universalist. He was a UEE Navy fighter pilot who ended up running for office in his home system of Khalith, the Tavaran homeworld, which is still inhabited by Tavaran, and won the election against his human opponents. They're all also humans who live in Khalith. Vertical Slicers is the next gang? Yes, no. Is Ubisoft going to sue CIG over the use of the name The Division? CIG never calls them The Division, they call them Division. They don't use the in there. And the full name is Division of Executive Services, DES. So I don't think Ubisoft owns the word division. All right, so let me pull up some of this information. I'll put up on the Galactopedia so I can show you. Fire. There we go. So for those of you who don't know, there's this great resource called the Galactopedia. Break it down, and we're going to look at some of the different factions of Pyro and talk a little bit about their history, about what they are, and so you can get to understand, because there are a couple of factions that exist right now that you can see that are overt, like the Rough and Ready, the Headhunters, the CFP, the Frontier Fighters to a degree, and Xenothreat, and some smaller ones that we see like the Fire Rats and the Horizon. But there are also other groups like the Overlords and so on and so forth. The Drop Kings, which sort of show up. There's something like 60 gangs in Pyro. I'm not going to list all of them because most of them are just names. But the idea is we'll go through these gangs so you can get to see that the faction warfare is going to get kind of muddled very quickly. All right, so here are the Fire Rats. Fire Rats are a criminal organization and religious cult based in the Pyro System. It originated in 2563 when a group of former pyrotechnical amalgamated workers found themselves abandoned on Bloom, Pyro 3, after their employer declared bankruptcy. Forced to eke out a living or perish, they took up residence in their former barracks. It is rumored that when the resources began to run low, a large cargo ship that had been hit by a powerful stellar flare crashed near their settlement, granting them a bounty of supplies. This is believed to be the origin of their reverence for the Pyro Star and its especially violent stellar activity. Today, the Fire Rats are known for shipjacking and sporting scars from repeated intentional exposure to stellar flares. So the Fire Rats, which you will meet in the conflict zones, so you actually can go to a Fire Rats temple, church, chapel. If you go to the conflict zone, one of the conflict zones, you'll see like these sorts of pews and this gigantic star made out of metal, made out of steel that's kind of twisted into steel with like flames all around it. That is the Pyro Rat, or the Fire Rat Sanctuary. So they actively worship the star, and they are a religious group that believe the star is a god, and that to listen to the star, they go to Monarchs, which is Pyro 2, and in the caves of Monarchs, when stellar activity is at a certain rate, the minds will whisper to them. They call it the Whispers of the Prophets, and because it's named after a famous being that's supposed to live inside the minds of Monarchs called the Prophet of Pyro, who can tell the future to people who seek them. And so they believe that the Prophet of Pyro is sort of a expression of their god, which is the Pyro Star. In fact, not the only sun cult. There are actually 2 or 3 sun cults in the Star Citizen lore. Pretty popular thing to worship the sun. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. They're the oldest faction in Pyro that we know of, because they're descended from the original pyrotechnic amalgamated settlers. So from 2563. So we're talking the end of the settlement of Pyro by the Pyrotechnic Amalgamated Corporation. So they predate the Headhunters by 100 years. Which sun? It depends. The Fire Rats worship the Pyro Sun, and the Outsiders, they worship the Lear Sun. So what you're saying is that Pyro will be like the Syrian civil war in space, minus the government being there? Probably more like Somalia. Little warlords carving up the territories and trying to battle it out for better stuff. Is there any gang with presence in a lot or most of the UE systems? Yeah, they're called the Nova Riders. They're sort of like a loose association of pirates. But you also got to remember that it's not just pirates and outlaws. There are also outlaw syndicates. The most feared syndicate that we know of is called the Otoni Syndicate. They're one of the largest organized criminal syndicates in the UEE, and they do so by franchising. They're not in Pyro as far as we know, but they are in Stanton, and you've met their leader, the leader of the Stanton Syndicate, if you've been to Area 18. I'll leave it at that. Because I do want to do a big deep dive when CIG decides to actually flesh out the mission givers and such some more, so. Nick Pyros, yeah. We love some CIA-style advocacy missions where you play multiple sides because the department in the UEE sees keeping the factions fighting each other easier than gun cleaning house, or dealing with another xenothreat incursion. That's the reason why. The more I think about it, the more I'm believing that the DES is responsible for the frontier fighters, because it's destabilizing. For a relatively cheap amount of money, they can get the frontier fighters. They can use the frontier fighters to destabilize the region and keep any one faction from gaining too much power, thus keeping control of it. And it's funny because someone commented saying I was like a 9/11 truther when I'm like, I didn't want to be like, bro, do you know what Guatemala is? have you heard of the Sandinistas? Like, this is shit that America has done in other countries in the past. Why wouldn't the version of the CIA that is in Star Citizen be doing that to effectively a third world country? I mean, why are they called the Fire Rats? Fun fact, it's because of the players named them. This faction is actually created by the community. They did a live stream where they did a pitch of make your own pyro faction, and they were trying to like move people towards like cyberpunk ideas, and the fans were like fire, 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 fire. And they're like, okay, well then, okay, so they're fire what? What are some of the things? And someone would be like, rats, and they're like, oh, okay, why fire rats? Okay, what do? They're like, they worship the sun. So CIG wanted a cyberpunk cool gang, and the fans were like, no, we want eldritch horrors beyond our imagination. give us a Cthulhu cult, and Cthulhu cult. I believe the rats is reference to the alopecia rat, the elaporat, whatever it's called, the alopecia rat. That is the rat on the stick. It's common in Pyro. That's probably the reference to it. Do we know the Parain of this syndicate boss? I don't know what that means. Hail the V8. Yeah. Are the Frontier Fighters a real faction, or are they all the Slicers? That's the good question. We actually don't have a full indication of what they are. They are, in my opinion, based off of the research I've done and based off of things I've read, I believe that they're the remnants of the old militia that that Dash created, the founder of the CFP, because they fit that sort of mold. But everything that CIG has said so far seems to indicate that they are the Slicers. The Frontier Fighters are the Slicers, and they just let their own eagerness to punish Pyro get ahead of their own morals, as it were. All right, so that's the Fire Rats. They're the oldest. Then we're going to look at the headhunters. So the headhunters are the next oldest as far as we know. They're a major criminal organization in the Pyro System that specializes in smuggling, theft, and protection. Originally from the Virgil system, the gang rose to the prominence of the smugglers as smugglers in 2610s when they established a fast shipping route from Virgil to Terra through Nyx, and Pyro proved to be difficult for the authorities to detect. By the 2620s, they fully relocated to Ruin Station, where they could more easily avoid the encounters with the Advocacy. It was during this era that they adopted the human skull through their symbolism and began including motifs of it in tattoos, personal decor, and graffiti. The location marked with the headhunter skull warned criminals of the areas under their control. Much of the Pyro stayed under their influence until the criminal syndicate of the Drop Kings challenged their authority in the 2740s in an effort to expand their smuggling network. The resulting series of conflicts caused control of Ruin Station to pass back and forth between the gangs for several decades. The Drop Kings ultimately withdrew when they clashed with another criminal syndicate, which we don't know of, in 2912. Since then, the gangs are officially on neutral terms, though they maintain a sense of rivalry. So the Headhunters are the second oldest gang. They're actually a smuggling gang. Their main focus was smuggling goods during the Mezzer era, and that's another topic that I have to go over on my own in my videos. But the Mezzer era is a time period between 2545 and 2792. So for almost 300 years. It's almost 300-year period in human history where humanity was under the control of a single family called the Mezzers, or the Messers. The original Messer was Ivar Messer, and he was the hero of the First Ivarn War, and used his status to propel him to the status of Imperator, the leader, and created and his descendants were the ones who would inherit the title of Imperator. So we have like Mezzer 1, Mezzer 2, Mezzer 3, up to Mezzer 11, I think. It might be less now. The last Mezzer was named Linton Mezzer, and they were as a whole kind of like the Caesars, kind of like the it's a really messed up monarch line, but they weren't alone. They had lots of like other aides and stuff like that. So the Headhunters started off as basically an organization that was trying to get around the Messer era rules. So they were actually outthinking the sort of fascistic oligarchical like government that was in control of humanity. Why are they called headhunters if they're smugglers? Because they smuggle slaves. Like that's one of their main products. And if you know what headhunters it's a joke. If you understand what a headhunter is, so. Aren't HH the ones that control fuel and pyro? No, that's Rough and Ready. The Rough and Ready was part of the headhunters at the point. They're thugs, not revolutionaries. That's a good point. But they blurred the line. It's important to note that a lot of these organizations and gangs were founded by revolutionaries originally. A lot of the original criminal outlaws, the groups that are now the criminal outlaw syndicates and pirates, were founded by anti-unificationist rebels from early in human history during the formation of the United Nations of Earth. After the failure of the anti-unificationists to defeat the UNE during the Unification Wars, they scattered across human space, and they ended up founding some of the first pirate gangs. So most pirate gangs trace their lineage back to rebels. So if you hear their language, if you hear how they talk, if you see how they dress, it's all very anti-authoritarian. It's also very like we're on our own. So they're very punk-esque, like the cyberpunk-esque aesthetic is because they're literally anti-governmental groups. They're not just we're here for money and booze and women. It's like we would love to overthrow the government because fuck the man kind of thing. And the lines are very blurred because we also know that, for instance, smugglers were a big part of the revolutionary movements during the Meser era. Famously, the founder of Crusader Industries, I say Alex Dugan, that's the wrong person. Why am I blanking on his name? I say it weird and people get mad at me. August Dunlow. August Dunlow, who founded Crusader, was a revolutionary. His parents were killed during the violent coup of Linton Meser. So when Linton Meser took the throne, August was the son of a lower middle class family. Both his parents were killed during the coup, and he was an orphan at the age of 10. And so he got picked up by a group called Angeli's Angels and got education, got a scholarship, went to college, and went to college to become a business major. But he never lost his hatred for the Messers, so he became a major mover, a major political figure in the anti-Messer movement of the Croshaw system. And when the advocacy tried to murder him, and he just barely missed an advocacy assassination, he was smuggled out of the UEE, smuggled by smugglers like the headhunters. Possibly the headhunters themselves smuggled him out. Because they smuggled them to it was called the Revolutionary Road, which was through Bremen and Nix and other places, and they took him out to a kind of remote Xi'an system where the Xi'an kept human revolutionaries to then release them back into the UEE when the revolution started in 2971, 72. I wouldn't be surprised if CIG, because CIG is doing a lot of this unification stuff where they're bringing a lot of the different lore threads together. I think that's a simple one. It's an easy one for them to connect. Like the headhunters were the people who smuggled Dunlow out of the UEE and saved his life. Because that would be, personally, I think that would be a great little nod, because you can be like, oh yeah, no, yeah, because both these organizations have been around for a very long time. And I could see that being a nice, like a little thumb at the nose at the Crusader. If Crusader decided to get snippy, be like, we saved you. You only exist because of us. Be humble, you know? What do you think the chances are that the reputation system is expanded and HH reabsorbs R&R and we should have HH or CFP controlled stations? Unlikely, but we'll see where it goes. I think a lot of what CIG is doing right now with the factions is more to do with the realities of the game as it stands today, rather than their plans long term. Isn't that a senator in the UEE? Garmin humble. Let's pull up the Xeno threat so we can learn a little bit more about the Xeno. I don't think they have rough and ready. Oh, they do. All right, let's do rough and ready first. So based off of the actual dates, we know rough and ready are the next group. They were founded by Rook Jarvis in 2939. He was a what do they call them? He was like a not like a capo, but he was like one of the big leaders of headhunters. Like their headhunters are effectively they have a council, and this council is led by specific leaders. These leaders are the ones who make the decisions and then send it down to their sub leaders. And there's a council of like 5 or 6 people who run all. And this council, he actually went to the council with a proposal because he felt like by the time the Drop Kings, who had disappeared in 2919, by the time they had disappeared, the headhunters had gotten lazy. They had become complicit with what was going on in the Pyro system. And so he proposed that in order to really secure the funds and to secure the system was to build a business. So he proposed taking the Pyro stations, much of which had been abandoned or overrun by squatters, kicking out the squatters, fixing it up to be a legitimate business, and selling fuel to people traveling through Pyro. So it was less of a overtly hostile gang and more of like presenting themselves as a corporation just in Pyro. And the headhunters thought it was stupid. Notably, one of the headhunters' leaders was drunk as heck. I already said swore in this one. He was drunk as shit at the whole meeting, just like passed out most of it. So they were like not exactly in a good headspace. And so he went off and then gathered a bunch of other headhunters who liked his idea, and formed a splinter group, which he calls Rough and Ready, which is based off of Rest and Relax organization. He wanted to create his own sort of. Now he's dead. He died in the late 2940s, but his two sons run the R&R now. So. Why are they called Rough and Ready? Because they're rough and ready to fight. Yeah, basically what Asim is talking about. Made men, yeah, they effectively. So the reason why they control most of the stations in the system right now is, again, I think narratively it's going to stay the same, but it's going to likely change. The reason why they do right now is because of gameplay limitations. It's almost certainly the reason why they wrote this was because they wanted to have a neutral party which players could interact with, that was were places where you could spawn, in, or like get a ship or stay and refuel. They wanted a somewhat neutral party before things got crazy, because you can tell that because CIG has not given Ruin Station to Xenothreat, which famously is supposed to be the leaders of Ruin Station is Xenothreat. Now, CIG may change that Xenothreat is still active in Pyro, but they don't control Ruin Station, but I don't see that happening. I think Ruin is still going to be a major sort of focal point for a lot of actions in Pyro. Off topic, but I want more Tavaran ships. They're the only ones I use. Tavaran ships are cool. Tavaran are really cool. There's a large group of people who are interested in seeing CIG flesh out the Tavaran more. They're a very fascinating group of people, which allow for species that allow for a very interesting storytelling in the verse if they did it right. We'll see. All right. Xenothreat. Now let's talk about Xenothreat. Sorry, back and forth. I'm trying to transition that's a little bit less harsh. So Xenothreat is very interesting because we didn't really see Xenothreat. Like, Xenothreat didn't exist until fairly recent. I'll read through their whole thing. Xenothreat is a human outlaw group based in Pyro System that is known to be for a violent anti-alien and anti-corporate ideology. Law enforcement believes that the group is primarily formed by corrupt ex-members of the UEE armed forces, or UEE military. Most of its criminal activity was concentrated in the Pyro System until 2949, when systems connected to Pyro such as Stanton and Terra began to report raids by members of Xenothreat. In 2951, Xenothreat launched an organized raid into the Stanton system that was eventually repelled by the combination of UEE advocacy and CDF forces. The raids, the Xenothreat incursion of February 2951. Excuse me, Paul. I think you're mispronouncing the name. Hint, the name sounds exactly like target practice. So they showed up in like 2946 and took over Ruin Station, was their lore. And the thing about them is that they are exclusively and explicitly they're a xenophobic organization. And their anti-corporate stance has more to do with their xenophobic stance, because they earnestly and honestly believe that the UEE government and corporations have been infiltrated by the Xi'an. And they believe that aliens, the Xenos, are pure, or have defiled the purity of humanity, and they want to destroy all of the Xenos, while also attacking anyone who is associated. The thing is that because they're an overtly political group, nobody in Pyro likes them, because they get a lot of attention to Pyro. The Xenothreat incursion into Stanton is the thing that starts off this narrative. The only reason why the Frontier Fighters and the CFP exist is because of Xenothreat's attack on Stanton. Without that main catalyst, we would never have had this sort of events happening. And the thing that CIG isn't subtle with their naming conventions and such. So, get this, the leader of Xenothreat is known as the Commander. With that symbol. Nope, not Shepard. Think of another vaguely evil group of people who have a commander at the top. I want you to think back to the 80s. Cobra! Yes. G.I. Joe. It's funny because we'll talk about the Overlords, but the Overlords are basically the Power Rangers. And so it's funny to think of Rated R Power Rangers versus Rated R Cobra from G.I. Joe fighting each other in Pyro. It's some clown show stuff, and I'm here for it. This is some Warriors level gang nonsense, and I'm here for it. I forgot Joseph Gordon-Levitt was Cobra Commander in the movies, in the first movie. All right, so let me pull up. Let me pull up a. Okay, so here is the full video. So this we get a lot of our context of what they believe through this video, because this is literally the video that they released. That you could when Xenothreat originally attacked, they played this video on the TVs. You know, those TVs that play nothing but the Orison commercials. They used to play these on the TVs that they interrupted those commercials before, for every so often, for the days leading up to the event starting. So they actually posted it on the RSI website, the full 1 minute and 20-second sort of videos. So here you go.
Attention, people of Stanton. A great injustice has been done to you. For decades, the spineless bureaucrats of your government have been selling you and your fellow citizens piece by piece to the alien scum outside our borders and to their corporate masters within. Their greed, only matched by the absolute disregard for the values that made humanity great in the first place, My brothers and sisters have watched them feed on the dying carcass of the Empire for long enough. With the passage of the Human Xi'an Trade Initiative, it's clear that the government is happy to sell the final parts of humanity into servitude. The time has come to send a message that we will not consume their lives anymore, that we are the ones in charge. Stanton will be the first step in a revolution to take back the soul of the Empire. You will be witnesses. We are Xenothreat. Out.
CIG's not subtle with their writing either. The only threat here is threat here is that of cringe. Yes, my Twitch is still the Astropub. Masters, the English accent shows through the voice changer. Yes. I swear I still hear that thing playing in Area 18 sometimes. It's very cool. I liked what they did. Yeah, it'd be better if they did some Kane nod shit and went full camp. I think they will with Xenothreat. That's not the last time we've seen or heard from the commander, I think. The thing you all have to understand is that there are no explicitly good factions or explicitly evil factions in the Star Citizen universe. Every faction has its perspective and is willing to do extreme things to achieve its goals. There are factions which are more good aligned, but you're not going to have paladins in the Star Citizen. And you're not going to have mustache twirling bad guys. Everything is going to be couched in the perspective of different political opinions, different philosophies on life, and that sort of. So, like, the reason why there's plenty of people who agree with Xenothreat in the community is because they see what Xenothreat is saying is like, aliens are evil, and corporations are selling you out. Solar Corporation is selling you out. And are they wrong? Not necessarily. Corporations do control the UEE. They're pretty prevalent in terms of their control. And alien influence in the humanity is pretty high. And the Xi'an definitely are playing the long game when it comes to dealing with humanity. And they definitely have some ulterior motives, just like any organization, any government organization would with another government organization. Governments aren't there to help each other out. They're there to try to utilize each other as much as possible for the benefits of their own people, or for their own interests. The problem with Xenothreat is they took these sorts of situations, these realities of the Star Citizen universe, and said, you know what the best solution is? Mass murder. The solution is violence. And impotent violence at that, because they got beat by a bunch of effectively farmers with pitchforks in their first attempt at any sort of mass attempt. So the Xi'an are realists, not liberalists in international politics. Yeah, but the Xi'an aren't unified. They have a unification mindset, like they have a unified front when talking with everybody else. But the reality is that the Xi'an are constantly backstabbing each other to try to get favor with the emperor of the Xi'an Empire. So families, full-blown families, are going after each other. Families who are in the underclass against the upper-class families will actively try to murder or subvert their superiors to get those positions. The thing is that this sort of open hostility is not okay in the Xi'an Empire, because that's what caused the Xi'an to lose their homeworld. So as a result, it's much more clandestine. It's circles within circles, plans within plans. It's the 10,000-year plan coming into an effect. Everything is warfare. To the Xi'an, they just don't overtly attack each other. They set their plans in motion, and they try to find the other plans and counter those plans while not getting their own plans getting caught. So because that's their society, they're dealing with humanity the same way, and humanity is getting caught with their pants down more than often because they don't live as long as the Xi'an do. But the Xi'an are also not adapting well to this because humanity is much younger in terms of a species, and because we don't live as long. They're like, yes, the plans are going to go in place, and why does that guy die? What happened? Why? You elected who? What's an elect? You elected somebody? What's an election? You choose people to be your leaders? How do you do this? You just paper slips? What? So the Xi'an are still coming to grips with what humanity is and how humanity works, and humanity's morals. And unfortunately, humanity is influencing the Xi'an as much as the Xi'an are influencing humanity, because there are plenty of Xi'an who think the human side of things and human style of things is preferable, especially young Xi'an. So there is definitely some inner conflict that is going on inside the Xi'an Empire. And it doesn't help that the current emperor of the Xi'an Empire is dying. He is very old, and he does not have an heir. So there is no heir to the throne. He dies. There's likely going to be some sort of conflict to determine who should be the next Xi'an emperor. And the thing about the Xi'an emperor is the Xi'an emperor is not a chosen system. It is specifically given to the leader of a specific DNA type. You have to have a specific DNA mutation in order to be the emperor. And that's it. So there is no more of that mutation. That family line is dead. There's nobody left as far as we know. So the Xi'an are heading into their own big conflict, which might rip them apart. Not to mention, they're fighting the spirit wars with the Cathok on the other side of their empire. So they got more fish to fry other than humanity. All the while, humanity is going through its own problems between Terra and Earth. So what I'm trying to say is that the entire universe of Star Citizen is a gigantic mess. It is a huge mess of drama and tea, and that's perfect because it creates great stories for us players to get involved and do random things and this stuff. So Empire of Tea. Yeah. Sounds like a good hour-long video of the politics and political theory of the races. Yeah, I could probably do something. Reminds me of the choice between democracy/lifespan length in Stellaris. Xi'an are long-lived authoritarians. Their ways, they're more elaborate plans, but more stuck in their ways versus the more adaptability of humans. The Xi'an, don't get it twisted, the Xi'an are still more advanced than humanity, and they're much bigger. Like, the Xi'an Empire is huge. Humanity has only encountered a small fraction of the Xi'an Empire. And the fleet, which is bigger than any human fleet that we've able to muster, that the Xi'an have, is one of their fleets. They have multiple. Humanity is a small empire compared to the Xi'an. It's just that the Xi'an they could muster all, you can think of it, if you're looking at 40K terms, humanity are the Tau. Small empire, advanced, they're rapidly advancing, even though they're shorter lived. versus the Xi'an, who are like the Imperium. Big, massive, unwieldy, constant infighting. If the Imperium wanted to destroy the Tau, they could. But the cost of lives versus everything else that they have, their forces spread out, would be so great that it would cause them to collapse. So it's sort of this checkmate death situation. No, the Devouring homeworld is still around. It's the Xi'an homeworld that's destroyed. The Devouring homeworld is called Elysium, aka Caliph. And it's connected to Centauri and Idris. Let's pull up the map. And then we'll get back to the factions here. We're going to be kind of all over the place a little bit. The main focus is obviously the factions, but, you know, just kind of hanging out and talking Star Citizen lore and such. But all of this pulls into place because of, I believe that Pyro is going to be a proxy war for a lot of different major factions in the Star Citizen universe, including the main story campaign about the choice between the Terra and Earth factions. Welcome to the Arc Star map. This is on the website. It's actually won an award. All of these are systems in the Star Citizen universe that are planned to come out at some point. So, to give you context, we are over here. Stanton, here's Stanton. Here's Stanton. There's the Pyro jump point. There's Pyro. You'll notice that the Pyro Stanton jump point is actually way over here. Then we've got the Terra jump point, Terminus. Station over there. Checkmate station. There is... You don't see gaslighting. You can see like the Nyx system is over here. It's got a Castor jump point, Adrian, Terra, Stanton, and even Kano. So, let's go back to the galaxy. So, Stanton and Pyro right here, right? Astro. Let's turn on the jump point, not the jump points, so you can see the connections. So if we wanted to go to Elysium, we would go from Pyro to Kano, from Kano to Davian, from Davian to Farron, from Farron to Idris, and from Idris to Elysium. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps from Pyro, 5 jumps from Stanton. And it's on the other end of the Empire, the western side of the Empire. Basically, like right here, like this, represents the split between the Eastern and Western Empire. Everything this way is East, this way is West. So Terra, which is over here, is the center of the Eastern Empire. Yeah, so Pyro is actually a nexus of jump points. It has a lot of jump points. It's almost as valuable as Terra is, or Hadrian, in terms of the number of jump points it has. The difference is that I believe that most of these jump points out of Pyro weren't discovered until recently. The main jump point into Pyro came from where are you? I think from Kano. Yeah, I think it was from Kano. Yeah, it's definitely from Kano. Oh, it's even to Oso. What are Oso had? This is called the Arc Star Map, yeah. Yeah, so it's important to understand a couple of these. This, these systems are the small, medium, and large jump points. CIG has said that they are no longer going to be doing this system in the future. So. Kano, Liu Kang, Eden, Johnny Cage. To give you another idea, these are all Xi'an systems. These are all... Where are you? I know you're right. There we go. Oh, that's good. There we go. These are the Banu systems, right here. Bacchus, Gideon, and Gliese. And there's also one that's way over here. Like, boop, Treese. Which is actually connected to Xi'an systems. Like, why are you way over here? And then everything else is down here. It's actually a thing they've mentioned. Here's Vega. For those of you wonder what Vega is, you got Virgil over here. Virgil is also connected to Nyx. So, I guess in theory you could go well, you gotta go to Pyro to Nyx. From Nyx to Virgil, from Virgil to Oberon, and from Oberon to Null, and from Null to Centauri, from Centauri to Elysium. Still. The ninja have warriors, and do some of them resemble ninjas? We don't know how they're going to change the jump tunnels in the future, because the system that they did with the sizes isn't going to work. I personally hope what they go for is difficulty. So all of them are the same size or around the same size, and then you go with some sort of like ski level difficulty where you have like small translates into difficult, medium translates into like average, and large translates to easy, where like you don't really need to do much. You can just sort of like hands off with the easy, and it'll just take you through the process. Medium, you have to actually manually fly it, and then the hard are like you grip that stick because you're going through. Especially for larger ships, it becomes even harder. Ooh. All right, let's look up the... So, how to do... All right, so let's talk about the overlords. So they haven't been mentioned a lot recently, but this is what we know about them. They're vigilantes. They're a group of 6 vigilantes, only 6, that operate in the Pyro System. Many people in Pyro believe that the overlords are actually a Black Ops UEE Marine team or something of that sort. Like possibly these are gatherers from they act as gatherers for for Division, but they're some sort of hyper violent vigilantes. We know these are the names, their code names: Duststorm, Predator, Riptide, Stinger, Supernova, and Switchback. Their leader is Stinger, this one right here. This one, he is their leader. And of course, this is also voted on by the community. The community decided that Stinger was the leader. These are some fun ones they have. Switchback, Predator, Stinger, Riptide, Supernova, Duststorm. Helmeted vigilantes are targeting established operations across the system. They're killing and capturing anyone they encounter. Even the sanctuaries aren't safe anymore. They're here to end our way of life and deserve no mercy. It doesn't matter who's behind those helmets. Destroy them before they destroy you. Free people of Pyro, beware. Some people are think that maybe the Frontier Fighters have taken on the mantle, like of the Overlords. That the Overlords have become the Frontier Fighters in the narrative. But as far as we know, the Overlords are still around. But the Overlords are unique because they kill everybody. They're that sort of Frontier Fighters mentality of kill them all and maybe figure it out later. They'll even attack non-pirates because they think that anybody in Pyro other than themselves is a outlaw. They look like Transformers, yeah. The joke is that this is Bumblebee. Let me show you a little bit more. Horizon. Go to the half here. Citizens Prosperity. Spear Fighters, Ninetails, Slicers, Streaming Galleons, Levskis, the Overlords, the Outsiders, Tony Syndicates, One Munitions Corps, and no. Oh, and the Bit Zeros. Ooh, Argul Dawn. The CFP. Madge Dash Hartford is the founder, and yeah, this is the CFP exists in Jackson Swamp, Sunset Mesa, and Yang's Place and Monarchs, Bueno Ravine, Frigid Knot, Nara's Rest and Shepherd's Rest on Bloom, Camper's Point and Ignis, and Bullock's Reach on Terminus. They also this says here that Starlight, Rod, Dudley, and Megumi are all Citizen Prosperity, but they're actually Rough and Red. Fuck the CFP. All my homies hate the CFP. So I'll go over their history a little bit. Their headquarters is in Lorville. So I want to make this clear. Right here. The headquarters of the CFP is not in Pyro. It is in Lorville. The CFP are headquartered in Hurston on Lorville. Okay? Okay, but they operate outside of Pyro. That's the thing. Originally, they were designed specifically to pacify Pyro. But with their success in the wake of the Xenothreat incursions, they galvanized and got a lot of interest in a bunch of different organizations and governments, and they created splinter groups for Citizens for Prosperity for a bunch of different systems. So the Citizens of Prosperity is sort of the frontier militia organization, the sort of umbrella organization that is there for law-abiding UEE citizens if they're looking for work outside of the UEE borders. So the Citizens of Prosperity exist in Pyro, that's their main focus, but there are branch groups in places like Virgil and in Nyx and other places which are not explicitly UEE controlled. First, it just cares for all the free workers out making the system a better place. No outside reasons. Here's my logic picking the CFP. I don't like the pirates, and Pyro with less pirates will make my hauls through Pyro. And that's that's why I constantly say that, like, there is no such thing as good guys or bad guys. I believe, based off of what I've read and I've seen, explicitly the CFP are a Hurston-aligned organization. So they mean well, and they have good intentions. But their actual benefactors, the people who keep them paid, are the Hurstons. So the Hurstons do want peace and organization to exist in Pyro so they can exploit the system. So they can exploit it for all the resources they could gather for themselves. So they have a vested interest in pacifying Pyro because they get more money. And more money is what the Hurstons want. Hyper-capitalism. And so by funding a relatively small amount of money into an organization, they may seek to gain massive amounts of profits in the long run. So why not? And they're obviously not the only organization. Most of their weapons and armor are Castak Arms based. That's because Castak Arms is based. I will explain Castak Arms here in a moment. Castak Arms are the most corrupt and best company in the Star Citizen universe. They are so corrupt, openly corrupt, that they horseshoe back. They loop back Ouroboros back to being a legitimate funder of liberation movements. Castak, not Gastak. Cas with a K. The short story of Castak Arms is that Castak Arms was formed after the fall of Virgil. It's named after the capital city of Selene, which is the main planet of the Virgil system. The capital city was called Castak, and Castak Arms was formed in Vega by Vega citizens as a means to make cheap, effective weapons and armor for the citizenry to defend themselves against the Vandal incursions. Because when Virgil fell, basically nobody trusted the UEE to actually protect its citizens from the Vandal invasions. So Virgil began to absolutely go ham in building up their own defenses. So Virgil, like a lot of the defenses in Virgil are actually built by the Chamber of Commerce and the governments of the Virgil system, of both Aramis and Selene. Selene is the Virgil. The capital city was I'm kind of blanking on the Virgil capital name. Anywho, the two Virgil 1 and 2. I think it's 1 and 2, maybe 2 and 3. the two settled planets of the Virgil system. So Castek Arms was owned by the government. It was a government-owned corporation explicitly to build cheap and effective weapons and armor. Weapons that were designed to kill a charging Vanduul. So they're all overpowered, but they're so simple a baby can use them, is the idea. I thought most resources were already taken from Pyro, or did that get retconned? It sort of got retconned because they wanted to make sure that people would go there. The retcon is that most of the easily accessible resources are gone, but a lot of stuff still remains because the areas where you could get them before, were before unreachable because shield technologies were not advanced enough to protect you against the solar radiation, the solar flares. So it just didn't make a lot of sense. All of the resources that were easy enough to get with the technology at the time are gone. But the harder to reach ones from 400 years ago are now a lot easier to reach, but now you have to deal with the gangs. So modern technology has made Pyro a lot more accessible to people flying through it and to the corporations and other individuals who are looking to stuff. So, but yeah, so Castek Arms was a government organization building weapons and armor for everyone. They made them cheap so that anyone could purchase them. And they got caught sabotaging the early warning beacons by the jump points to make it look like the Vanduul had been sabotaging the early warning beacons because, and this wasn't the only time they did it. They found out that they were doing this frequently. Whenever their sales would go down, they would go sabotage the beacons so that people would panic and buy their guns and armor. And when they got caught red-handed, like absolutely red-handed, they were a government-owned corporation that were manipulating the market for their own benefit. They were about to get shut down when an angel investor showed up, purchased Castek Arms entirely, and made it go private. So they ended up getting completely scot-free of these accusations. And since then, Castek Arms is famous for going into places with very low income and high crime and selling a bunch of cheap weapons. And then when the governments complain that Castek Arms is funding criminals, they just give the police forces free guns. Famously, they got called before Congress to answer for their actions, and their owner legitimately stood up, stared in the eyes of these senators, and said, "I'm sorry, I'm selling protection for people who are dealing with violent criminals. Are you telling me that I can't sell protection to people who need protection?" Dead on, in the face, said, "I'm sorry, are you against freedom? Do you want to get people killed because of criminals? Are you pro-criminal? Is that what it is, Senator?" Dead on knowing they were selling to criminals explicitly as like a business opportunity. They flipped it on their head, flipped them off, and walked out scot-free. These people are my heroes. And still profit from the next transaction. like I can't even, like, Jesus. Do you like puppies? Why do you not let me feed them? Food made from the poor. Yeah. They're so awesome. They're so completely corrupt. But again, they wrap right back around by being so corrupt, they end up being good. There isn't much a Coda can't solve. Famously, when the UEE had overthrown, when the rebels overthrew the Mezzer Empire, the Mezzer imperium, and instituted the new UEE, which we're under now. The UEE was pretty weak and wasn't able to deal with all of the Mezzer loyalists who remained in the UEE. So the planet of Locke, which is the main planet in the Idris system, was still under the control of a Mezzer dictator, who was the governor, who was installed by the Mezzers. So the UEE couldn't actually muster enough forces to kick them out. But there was an active rebellion on the planet anyways, and they were able to eventually overthrow the dictator because they could purchase Kastak arms guns. Kastak Arms was selling the rebels weapons before the revolution happened and just kept selling them guns. So it's explicitly because of Kastak Arms that Locke is free. The corporation, which was selling rebels guns while being a corporation that was selling the government guns. They were selling the enemy of the government guns. The people of Locke were so thankful for the Kastak Arms weapons and armor that they gifted the first flag of New Locke, the New Locke flag, to Kastak Arms, which they proudly display in their lobbies, in the lobby of their headquarters. My thought is it's likely got a Karna on it because it's supposed to be in reference to the African countries which have the AK-47 on them because it's kind of a symbol of their freedom. I love them. I love them. They are so perfect for the Star Citizen universe. It's just, mwah, no notes. Get a contract to supply a totalitarian government and then saw other customers. They are the Lord of War. It's the reason why I am a absolute zealous supporter of Kastak Arms in game. If I can, I'm buying Kastak Arms armor and weaponry wherever I go. My favorite gun in the game is a Custodian, and it will remain a Custodian until the day I die. That thing could be nerfed into oblivion. I will still carry that thing around. Also, it's the space P90, so. So how did Kastak Arms get away with it while the company like Drake gets dragged to the mud for selling to criminals? Because they have balls of steel? Did you not just hear me say that they went to the Senate and told them that, basically told them to their face, I'm sorry, do you want to support criminals? They did what Drake should have done, which is when people will say, well, Drake is selling all these to criminals, and then immediately turn around and it's like, I'm sorry, we're selling to free frontier folk who are fighting criminals. Do you not want us to support the free frontier folk that you have abandoned to outlaws and Vandul? That's basically what Kastak Arms did. They just said, we sell people freedom and protection. What is it? You were the one who's supposed to protect them, and you failed. So it's our job to do it. So when you solve the problem, then we'll leave. But you can't solve the problem. We will. Like look at ArcCorp. All the security forces in ArcCorp all wear 100% Kastak Arms armor and carry weapons. Like they are the cheapest option. And they're effective, and they're plentiful. So, why not? The Karna might as well be either a AK-47 or the AR-15 for how freaking common it is. They beat the case and hid the Bible with God watching. That's a good Kendrick quote, if I remember correctly. So yeah. We have privatized peace. You are welcome. Karna drop. Yeah, basically. The best part is that there is an AK-47 in the universe of Star Citizen. It is clearly an AK-47. It's in Squadron 42, but we still have not seen it in game. And my God, CIG, give me that Castak arms weapon. Why are you not giving me this Castak arms weapon? It is clearly a Castak arms weapon. It's designed like a Castak arms weapon. It's a Castak AK. Please, God, give me this Castak AK. Let's see if I can pull it up so I can show you all. Sorry, we got super sidetracked. But like Castak Arms is my favorite manufacturer, weapons manufacturer, and I got to do my own video on them at some point. Just gush about how awesome they are. It's not an AK-47, it's a KA-47, exactly. All right. Here we go. Here it is. It's obviously modified with its own sort of rusty bayonet, but like... About to say, was this invented by Ripley Castak? Well, it's clear that it's like, this is duct taped together in some places. It's clearly like a handmade version. But like, if Castak, it's clear that CIG's inspiration for Castak is Kalashnikov. It's even in the name. And so if the Karna is supposed to be the AK, this is clearly inspired by the AK. I'd love to see a kind of a cleaner version of this made by Castak. This is like a more outlaw-ified, like modified version, slightly modified version. You know, Splashnikov, yes. Right, this is an AK-47. This is a space AK. This is more of a Larg Nagarg. I don't know what that is, but okay. Let's see what the other factions. Well, we haven't really talked about the Frontier Fighters. So we don't know a lot about the Frontier Fighters, but I've kind of already referenced them a little bit. They're likely the organization that was originally founded by the founder of CFP and became the Frontier Fighters. As to why they attacked Stanton with the slicers, we don't know, but I have my theories, as I've mentioned in the video. Like a Karna, but you know, caveman. 2 barrels where the bullets come out. It's likely that the top one is ballistic and the bottom one is plasma or energy. So it has a dual fire mode where you can either fire a ballistic round or a energy round. CIG loves its dual action weapons. It's dual purpose weapons. Hey, Paul, question for you. Assuming every system is open for content creators only tomorrow and a small crew of 3 weeks, what system do you want to explore? That's simple. It's the Hades system. Like, hands down, the Hades system. Hades system's the most interesting, in my opinion, the most important system in the game. This man's hunting for ancient Hadesian WMDs. I have my theories on that one too. I think we've already discovered the Hadesian WMD, and it is now called we now call it the Retribution. Why? Okay, so those of you who don't know the Hades system, I gotta do another video just on Hades itself, like redo that one that I did before, kind of talk about it. But the big reason why is because the Hades system, at its core, is a gigantic graveyard. So the entire system is an archaeological site. It is the location of a once existing species which wiped itself off the face of the galaxy 300,000 years ago. Well before even the Xi'an had spaceflight. So they're one of the oldest species to have existed, but they never discovered jump point travel. But they did settle and terraform their whole system. But at some point 300,000 years ago, they went extinct. There's signs of massive amounts of war and struggle, possibly some sort of civil war, and at the very edge of the system, it has what's called the half planet, because the planet was literally ripped in two by some sort of unknown force. The planets are like dotted with wreckage and rubble from cities and evidence of war, of nuclear explosions, like tons of sort of like after images of apocalypse. And so when humanity first discovered it, they named it Hades because it was like hell. It was like the underworld because it was dead. Fun fact, Star Citizen's versions of Halloween has its origin in the Hades system, because one of the first ships to study the Hades system was a ship called the Vara. And the Vara disappeared while studying the Hades system. And so it became a spooky ghost tale of the Vara would show up and try to kill all your crew. So it was sort of the Flying Dutchman. So as a result, we have the Day of the Vara, which is the day it disappeared, and it supposedly comes back to the living and tries to drag the living with it to the dead. The bar can fucking try. And on top of that, as Iris is pointing out, there's the Blue Man. It has its own cryptid. It's known as the Blue Man, or Toby, which is a reference, if y'all get it, where a being seen, bipedal, looks vaguely humanoid, which will show up in the corner of the eye of somebody, and you don't even have to be landed on the planet. It would just this blue being, which is translucent, and it has, you can see its veins. It's like you can see like the musculature and veins and sort of transparent blue skin that's glowing. And it'll pop up in your vision and then disappear. You can see it on the planet. You can see it in ships. If you're passing through the Hades system, there's reports of like people just sort of like going through their cargo bays and just seeing the Blue Man in their cargo bay and just disappearing. And every single species that have been through the Hades system, Banu, Xi'an, Tavaran, and humanity, have all seen the Blue Man at some point. Nobody knows who the Blue Man is, what it is, why it's there. And the thing about it is that the Hadesians were not humanoid. They were like driders. They had sort of a big bulbous body with like 6 to 8 legs, and then a torso with arms. So they didn't look like humans or humanoids. They looked like D&D driders, spider-human hybrids. That because we actually, some of their statues have been preserved, and so we know what the Hadesians look like. This looks like a human, and nobody knows why. Spider centaurs, yeah. Not to mention that there are supposedly ghost cruisers which fly around the Hades system and attack passerbys. The thing about Hades is that it's a major thoroughfare. Like, it connects a lot of the different parts of the Empire together. So it's a major trade hub. No one stops there, but you go through it a lot. So you're basically like driving past a cemetery every time you go. Does he look like Xian to Xians or Banu to Banu? No, it looks like a human. Well, humanoid, 2 legs, 2 arms kind of thing, which is sort of like Xian and Banu, but it's always been described vaguely human. We don't know the proportions. It's never been explicit. I think it's because CIG doesn't want to tip their hat too much with it, but it's definitely CIG's spoopy system. It is their Halloween system. It is their system where they want to do a lot of their kind of more horror themed content, because a lot of people have been asking like, oh, well, are we going to see horror stuff in Star Citizen? It's like, Dave Haddock is a massive horror fan. So yes, we're going to see the lead writer. We're going to see horror content. And I think it's going to be mostly based around Hades. And the best part is that Hades is only like 1 or 2 jumps away from Pyro. So it's not too far away. It's within the near future of Star Citizen's like post 1.0 content. That could be, in 3 years or in 50 years. We don't know, but maybe it varies under the observer. If a human's thinking about Vandul, it's a really tall, bulky humanoid form. Maybe. So the Drider aliens got by some spooky alien psionics. We don't know. I doubt that even CIG has a full understanding of what the Blue Man is, or if they're even real. My headcanon is they didn't deliberately do it like Apocalyptic War, just an accident with experimental technology. The war was after the incident and the collapse of government infrastructure. Yeah, no, my theory is that the split of the half planet likely was not a weapon, but some sort of other device that was accidentally used, like maybe a faster than light travel device which failed, or their attempt at opening a jump point which failed. Or something like that. It wasn't intended as a weapon, but it was possibly that accident that caused the war to happen in the first place. They had the Star Wars moment of Q2ing through a planet. Yeah. Are there more than one Blue Men? We've not, I don't think there's never been a report of multiple Blue Men existing. It's always been a single blue person. Blue Man, been said. It's mostly known as the Hades cryptid. Paul's collecting Hadesian artifacts so he can build a planet cracker. Yes, the spicy toilet seat. If you found artifacts in an abandoned outpost, if you see like pristine or damaged or worn artifact, you see the large one, you realize it's a curve. So it's supposed to be like a big circle. And the theory is that the Hadesian artifact, it's actually a Hadesian artifact, is part of some super weapon that destroyed the half planet. like a portal to worlds, or like a Stargate, or a heated toilet seat that just went absolutely wrong. Some mad scientist was like, yes, I want to make sure that at the extreme cold temperatures of the upper north of this planet, I can have a nice toasty butt while I take my poo. And activated it and didn't realize he used some sort of antimatter, quantum technology and blew a hole through the planet. The most powerful poo known to mankind, known to the universe. The spicy toilet seat. That must have been a shitty plan. That's entirely me memeing on it, all right? Don't take it too seriously. See, Star Citizen needs more cryptids. I swear I've heard footsteps when I see one while sitting in dead space, even though I just left a personal hangar and there's no way anyone could be on board. I'd love to hear some more of that stuff. I'd love for CIG to lean into that. I know they're currently trying to fix the game right now. So, yeah, those sorts of things that really help bring life to the universe, but requires a lot of the game to be functioning, which it really isn't currently. So, if you want to talk more about that sort of stuff, I do talk about that more frequently on the AstroPub, both on YouTube and Twitch. I do a thing called the Office Hours, very similar to this, but we talk about the news, we look at the ISCs, we look at the monthly reports, we look at the roadmap updates, and so on and so forth. So, their equivalent to Nick Kershaw put his custom loo too close to his fusion power experiment, and the whole lab was situated on an unstable fault line. Real estate prices were cheap. So, we kind of tangentially went over all of the factions of Pyro. We do also know a couple of the other factions of Pyro. We know the Horizon Gang. We know the Drop Kings, which are tangentially related. We don't know a lot about the Horizons. We just know that they have a rivalry with the Fire Rats. They don't like each other. That's not also to mention the likelihood that we'll see Ninetales in Pyro at some point. Obviously, we see CFP. We could see some of the members of Nyx, like the Moraine and the People's Alliance of Levski, the PALs, in Pyro as well. Plus other factions like possibly the Division, Hurston Dynamics, the Advocacy, the UE Navy, all those sorts of factions in there as well. Are there any criminal factions that actually like each other? Yeah. I mean, that tolerate each other or like actively enjoy one another. They don't necessarily hate each other. They're all just rivals for it. It's kind of like how, are there any corporations that like each other? No, because they're all competing against each other. They tolerate each other for various reasons. Most of the organizations that are criminal don't like each other because they're competing for resources and land and territory, but they don't necessarily hate each other. For instance, the Ninetales and what I call the Klim-Shaw Par Syndicate, which is this nebulous group that's made up of of Shaw, which we don't have yet, Wallace Klim, and Eddie Parr, which we have, but he hasn't seen him. He's the unique bartender in Orison, in Microtech at Wally's Bar, or Wally's Bar? I think it's Wally's Bar. The tropical themed one in Orison, in Microtech, New Babbage. They're all one organization, and Wallace Klim has good relations with Ninetale. I mean, if they like each other a lot, they'd eventually join forces to become one. I think that's kind of what the Syndicate is, or the Council is going to be. The Council, I think, is going to be sort of a sort of loose alliance of the different factions to make sure that conflicts don't get out of control, so that different pirate and outlaw organizations and syndicates don't step on each other's toes so much that it causes a wider problem to get a lot more attention than they want to. And I've had my theories on that as well, that the reason why this exists is because they're likely made up of former groups. It's consisted of an old anti-unificationist group that tried to unify all of the different factions that were against the UNE into one sort of group, at least a loose confederation. And when they lost, they kept that council around as sort of a way to keep in touch and the way to maintain good relations with one another. And it eventually, over time, evolved into this outlaw group that's specifically designed to keep the other outlaws from going too rogue against each other. What happened to the Nova Riders? They're everywhere and nowhere. They're sort of a generic catch-all outlaw group. They're one of the first outlaw groups, but they get wiped out all the time, and then another group rises up and takes the name, the Nova Riders, and moves forward. They're one of the oldest, if not the oldest, pirate group in the universe. But they're old because every time they die out, someone picks up the name because they're an iconic faction. I remember more missions focused on them. Like saying one group can operate in another's territory as long as they stay out of the drug trade. Or if, like for instance, two syndicates are clashing and it's getting a lot of attention from the UEE, the other groups, the other factions in the area, or like the council as a whole might reach out and force a peace accord between them, because it's like you're making business hard for everybody. Stop this shit. Stop it. And I don't think that every outlaw organization is part of the council. There may be smaller independent groups of outlaws that don't associate with the council, and that may be something you do as a member of the council for the various organizations, is to crush these smaller groups before they can get enough power to threaten the council's power. I didn't even mention the Dusters. I believe that the Dusters are the descendants of the original inhabitants of Stanton, and I believe those original inhabitants of Stanton are from Pyro. Because it's clear from the leftover ruined outposts that are remaining in the Stanton system, those are very similar to the style of outposts that are in Pyro, and we know, at least early lore, which may have been retconned, but they haven't officially confirmed it yet, that the original settler, when the UEE showed up to Stanton, there were already people there and had been there for much longer. And they were anti-UEE. They were squatters and survivalists and other sorts of groups that were anti-UEE. It would also explain why there's so much material around the Stanton Pyro jump point from the Pyro side, because the citizens of Pyro knew about that jump point well before Stanton was discovered by the UEE, and they just never told anybody. Do you think Xenothreat is only in Pyro or in a lot of other systems? I think they're only in Pyro for now. Is there anyone who isn't anti-UEE? I feel like even the UEE is pretty anti-UEE. I think it's important to remember that there's different. The UEE is not a mono. It's not a monolithic organization. There are at least 3 different political parties, major political parties, that make up the UEE, plus independent groups and other minor parties that exist. So every group is vying for control of the UEE. And the current group that's in charge are the Universalists, but they tend to be very middle of the road. And so, like, right now, because the Universalists have a majority in the Senate, it would be the Universalists. They would be the ones who are not anti-UEE. But like the Centralists would consider themselves not anti-UEE, but also want to change the government. Same with the Transitionalists. They're not necessarily anti-UEE. They are, but they don't want the UEE to exist anymore. They want it to be reformed into the DSU, the Democratic Seller Union. The DSU. Could be where the Hurstons got a lot of their cheap labor from. They get them from all over the Empire, not just from Europe, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the original inhabitants were forced into Hurston servitude. I still think that the UEE actively genocided the people of Stanton to put their own spin on it. So the descendants of those original inhabitants became the Dusters, which is why they live in these shanty towns, which seem very unique to Stanton, because I believe that these were some of the locations that remained after their original settlements were destroyed by the UEE coming in to take control. So as a result, they are the natives of Stanton that have been persecuted by the corporations because they don't want them there, but they can't remove them. Any idea when the next space election is? So the next major election for the Imperator is not going to be until 2030, 2960. So for another 5 years. But there may be senatorial elections in places like Castra or Terra, which will probably happen. You just got all 7 boards within the contested zone. Was cool. One of the asteroids bases was property of the fuel rats. Fire rats, you mean? It seemed like they have a lot of cathedral inside or the hangar FPS areas. Yes, they do. You think Pyro would ever have a council on Ruin Station and one head of each gang would represent each gang, both destroyed Pyrolands? I think we'll probably see represented. Pyro will probably be the main location of the council in the main story of Star Citizen. So yeah, I could definitely see that being happening. I agree with Jail, and I've talked with Jail about this, that I don't think the Xeno threat is going to survive to one point. I think Xeno threat are going to be an organization that will disappear, and their death will be the kind of the mark of the end of the pre-story, of the prologue of the Star Citizen story, and the beginning of the main story of Star Citizen, which will play in one point. Well, the Xenothreat are kind of placed as sort of the generic bad guys. Like everyone can kill the Xenothreat, and you can't get reputation with them. And CIG's done everything they can to continue to make them the consistent enemy. Kind of like how the Vandul are always supposed to be the consistent enemy on the border. So they're a good faction to have while the game is in the state it is, but probably not a good faction to have later on down the line when they want more complex faction work. Xenothreat and Nazis in Star Citizen, you should always be willing to shoot them. Indeed. We're not even subtle about it. They are literally speciesists, space racists. Do we have to destroy Xenothreat in order to get aliens in the game? No, but that'd be funny. Right. All right, well, I try to keep these a little short, so it's not like super long, but we've been streaming for a little over 2 hours. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, hit that follow button on Twitch. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to be notified when these release and when to go live. I'm not going to be doing another one of these live streams for like lore discussions for another 2 weeks or so, and we might be a little different. For those of you who are interested in the lore content, I am going to be doing some lore content for Star Citizen. Obviously, the complete history of Star Citizen lore part 5 will be out soon. It's still being worked on, but it is some nowhere near completion. But in the meantime, I'm also going to be releasing a video on all of the foods, the lore of the food, the locations of where the foods are, the stats of all the food. So I'm going to go through every piece of food, like alcohol, drink, food, natural food, all of this stuff, put them all together, put their details out, even down their like nutrition and their like all their in-game stats, and talk about them, and if they have any lore associated with them. I'm also going to be doing a video on the factions, a primer, basically, of the Battletech universe. So if you like MechWarrior or Battletech, I'll be doing that. Just sort of a good hour and a half, a brief primer. So like an hour to an hour and a half long. So that's going to take a little longer. And I'm currently working on a recap of the first year of the Second Galactic War for Helldivers. So I'll be doing another big video on that. So I'm going to be branching out away from Star Citizen a little bit here and there, but I am still mainly focused on Star Citizen. It's just, I like to dip my toes into others franchises. My video that I did on the Titanfall universe is still very popular. I'm getting, every 2 days I get like 600 new people watching it. It's quickly climbing to be one of my most watched videos on the channel. So clearly people like my content, and I like other things other than Star Citizen. So I'll be branching out a little bit, but I'll still stick to Star Citizen. But when we have these sorts of times when Star Citizen the drought is big and people's interests are kind of wandering away from Star Citizen, I might try to dip my toes in a few other things. But a lot of that stuff is going to be exclusive to my Patreons and to my members for a little bit, and then I'll be releasing them later. So if you want to get access to that, you can try that. You don't have to. It's 100% optional. It does help me out a lot with creating content, because that money can go to my editor. It can go to getting more better equipment, and helping me justify my actions with my significant other. I can be like, see, money, we're making money, it's fine. And focus on that. Had that actually been in the game for a long time? Has Pyro actually made it to the live servers yet? Yes, it's been out for 3 months now, almost. Yeah, it's in live servers. It's been out for a bit. It's still kind of rough. But 4.02 should be coming out. 4.0.2 is coming out in March, so in like 2 weeks. You can feel free to, Carol. I may not respond to it yet. Is Chapter 3 a thing in Pyro? It will be. 2 years, you say? People like to have some crazy lore. The fact that they hatch and eat space stations sealant is wild. Yeah. But yeah, and I still want to do my Star Citizen is a dystopia video. I still need to do a full breakdown of the Squadron 42 prologue, where I kind of break down all of the different pieces of it. So there's lots of stuff I need to do. And as I have more time going forward and pace out my content, hopefully you'll be able to enjoy it. I do like to do these longer videos where they're like 30 minutes to an hour or beyond that, because people seem to enjoy the longer content, and it seems to be being picked up on the algorithm. And it's the stuff I like to watch when I'm looking for lore content. So hopefully you do too. Thank you for watching. And like I say every time, remember, ex Historia ad Astra.